Hi, boys and girls, it's Mrs. Fuxa. Let's get ready to read Ramona's World by Beverly Cleary. Beverly Cleary is a very famous author who wrote a lot of children's books. So if you like these books, there's a lot of books you can read this summer that are related to this series. She was born April 12th, 1916, and she had a birthday just this last April, and guess what? She's 104 years old. She's still alive. I read these books when I was younger, too. So her books are set in her neighborhood where she grew up in Portland, Oregon. In Portland, Oregon, they have a school named after her, Beverly Cleary School, and they have a statue out front. She went to school, became a librarian, got married, had some twins, and then decided to write some books that children would enjoy. And I know you're going to enjoy this one, and you're going to laugh and laugh. I would like you to have your vocabulary sheet that I provided for you that's in your packet, as well as your Chapter 1 worksheet. If you don't have those right now, please go get those and stop the video and then come back and restart it, and you'll be right at the right spot. Okay, so let's look at our vocab like we do at school. So Chapter 1, admired, means liked a lot. You do that on Lamb of God. You put who do you admire, and you write somebody that you look up to. Composition, a short piece of writing. You wrote compositions this year about a lot of different topics. Ecstatic, extraordinarily happy. And refused, said no. Like we did in school, let's look at our Chapter 1 worksheet that we're going to do now. I don't want you writing as we're reading. I want you to just listen for your answers as you go along, and then you can go back and do your homework when we're done. So you have a multiple choice question. What news does Ramona want to share with her new 4th grade class? And what book is Ramona's mother reading in Chapter 1? Then you have some short answers. What's the name of the new friend Ramona makes in Chapter 1, and how do the girls get to know each other? You have 2 answers you need to have down there. Question 4. What basic facts have you learned about Ramona Quimby by reading Chapter 1? Facts is plural, so you have to have 2 or more. Facts could be maybe what she looks like. What's her family like? What does she like to do? And why does Ramona admire yard ape Danny? Yard ape is such a silly name, but we'll find out why he's called that in this chapter, actually. So let's start reading. Beverly Cleary's Ramona's World, illustrated by Tracy Dockeray. Here's our content page. How many chapters are there listed? If you have 11 in your head, you are correct. There's only 8 days of learning left. So we're going to double up some chapters, which I know you'll like because you'll just want to keep reading and reading and reading. Here's a picture of Ramona with the monkey rings, and that plays an important part in our story. We have those on our playground. A lot of you guys like to get on those, and some of you hang upside down on those. Chapter 1, Ramona spreads the news. Now you can follow on your screen here, or you can grab your book and listen as you go along. It's up to you. Ramona Quimby was 9 years old. She had brown hair, brown eyes, and no cavities. She had a mother, a father, a big sister named Beatrice, who was called Beasis by the family, and this was the exciting part, a baby sister named Roberta after her father, Robert Quimby. Look at her tiny fingernails, Ramona marveled as she looked at the sleeping Roberta and her little eyebrows. She's already a whole person, only little. Ramona couldn't wait for the first day of school so she could spread the news about her baby sister. You can see the baby in the crib and Ramona looking over, and that thing that's hanging over the crib is called a mobile. So ask your parents if you had one of those. They spin and they keep the baby interested, and the baby can look at that as they're laying in their crib. That day finally came. It was a warm September day, and Ramona, neat and clean with lunch bag in hand, half skiff, half top, scrunching through dry leaves on the sidewalk. We'll stop there for a minute. I always tell you in school to make a picture in your head as you're reading, like a little movie. And you've stepped on dry leaves before, and you know that crunching sound, so you know exactly what that would be sounding like if you were there with Ramona. She was early, she knew, but Ramona was the sort of girl who was always early because something might happen that she didn't want to miss. The 4th grade was going to be the best year of her life, so far. Ramona was first to arrive at the bus stop in front of Mrs. Pitt's house. Mrs. Pitt came out the front door and began sweeping her front steps. "Hi, Mrs. Pitt," Ramona called out. "Guess what? My baby sister's 2 months old." "Good for her," said Mrs. Pitt, agreeable to a baby in the neighborhood. "Babies do not scatter candy wrappers or old spelling papers on the lawn in front of her house." Oh, we learned something about Mrs. Pitt in that paragraph. Think about that for a minute. In your head, did you have that she likes to have a nice clean lawn? Because it says she doesn't like candy wrappers or spelling papers on her lawn. Ramona pretended she was playing hopscotch until her friend Howie, who was already familiar with Roberta, joined her along with other children, some with their mothers who were excited about the first day of school. "Hi, Ramona," he said, and leaned against a tree in the strip of grass between the sidewalk and the street. He opened his lunch bag and began to eat his sandwich. Ramona knew he was doing this so he wouldn't be bothered carrying his lunch. "Little boy," Mrs. Pitt called out, "little boy, don't you drop any papers or orange peels in front of my house, and stay off my grass." "Okay." Howie took another bite of his sandwich as he moved to the sidewalk. Howie was not easily excited, which Ramona sometimes found annoying. She was often excited. She liked to be excited. And when the yellow bus stopped, Ramona was first on board. She plunked herself down. Ooh, plunked is a really good word. Instead of sat, makes a whole different meaning. Remember our shades of meaning during the year? She plunked herself down on a seat across the aisle from another fourth grader, a boy named Danny, who was wearing a white t-shirt with trailblazers printed on it. Ramona called him Yard Ape because she thought he acted like an ape on the playground. We'll stop for a minute. I know you've been to the zoo, or you've seen movies on television that show monkeys swinging from tree to tree. So in your little movie that you have going on in your head, think of Yard Ape swinging and swinging and swinging on the playground. She was glad he had not moved away during the summer. "I have a new baby sister," she informed him. Yard Ape closed his eyes and hit his forehead with the palm of his hand. "Oh, another Ramona," he said and groaned. Ramona refused to smile. "You have a little brother," she reminded him. "I know," answered Yard Ape, "but we just keep him for a pet." Ramona made a face at him so she wouldn't know she liked him. Ramona jumped off the bus at Cedarhurst School. She greeted old friends, most of them in new or at least clean clothes for starting the fourth grade. And when she saw Janet, whom she had seen in the park during the summer, the two girls compared calluses on the palms of their hands. "Your calluses are really big," said Janet, impressed. "I know you know what these are, but we'll stop anyway in case somebody does not know. Calluses are blisters that harden up on the palm of your hand. So where your fingers meet your palm, if you've done monkey bars too many times, or you've used a rake or a shovel and you get blisters and the blister pops and gets hard and yellow, that's calluses. I think you've had those before, sometimes from the playground." It was true. Ramona's calluses were hard and yellow because she lived close to the park, where she often went with Beesus and her mother and Roberta on warm summer days. She worked hard at the rings, pump, pump, swing, pump, pump, swing. And by the end of summer, she was able to travel down the line of rings and back again. "There's Susan," cried Janet, and ran to join her. Reluctantly, Susan followed. "Hi, Susan," she said, eyeing Susan's short blonde curls. "Hi, Ramona," answered Susan. Neither girl smiled. The trouble was the grown-up Quimby's and Susan's parents, the Kushners, were friends. Ramona did not know what Miss Kushner said, but her parents often said things like, "Now you be nice to Susan. Susan is such a well-behaved little girl," or, "Susan's mother says Susan always sets the table without being asked." Such remarks did not endure Susan to Ramona. There was more. In kindergarten, Susan did not like Ramona, who could not resist pulling the long curls she had at that time and saying, "Boing," as she released them. In first grade, when the class was making owls out of paper bags, Susan copied Ramona's owl. The teacher held up Susan's owl to show the class what a splendid owl Susan had made. This seemed so unfair to Ramona that she crunched Susan's owl and found herself in trouble. Big trouble. So how could anyone expect the two girls to be friends? As Ramona expected, the calluses on Susan's hands were so small they could scarcely be seen. Then Ramona saw a new girl who was standing alone, a new fourth grader. Ramona decided, and because she admired the girl's long fair hair, she went over to her. We have a cute picture here. So we've got the three girls comparing their hands. Their hands are looking at their palms. And there's a girl standing alone to the left. Have you figured out who that is? Do you think that's the new girl? Let's keep reading. Ramona went over and asked, "What's your name?" "Daisy," answered the girl. "Daisy, kid." And when she smiled, Ramona saw that she was wearing bands on her teeth. Ooh, do you know what bands are? Braces. "What's your name?" Daisy asked, as Ramona told her. The bell rang, ending their conversation. On her way to the fourth grade, Ramona passed her former classroom, where the teacher was standing outside the door welcoming her new class. When she saw Ramona, she waved and said, "How's bright-eyed, bushy-tailed Ramona?" People often called Ramona bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. And when she was younger, she blinked her eyes, held up her hands like paws, and wiggled her bottom as if she were wagging a tail. Now that she was a fourth grader, she was too grown up for such babyishness, so she waved and said, "Hi, Mrs. Waisley." Ramona's fourth grade teacher was Mrs. Meacham, a plump, cheerful woman in a green pantsuit and blouse printed with flowers, a good sign. Ramona liked teachers who wore bright, cheerful clothes. Mrs. Meacham, Ramona decided, must be very old, because Howie's father had gone to school with her when he was a boy. After inspecting her new teacher, Ramona looked at the chalkboard for spelling words. The board was blank, another good sign. Mrs. Meacham passed out name tags and made a little speech about how learning was fun in the fourth grade, and everyone should work together to make this a great year. She then passed out papers with borders of dinosaurs, another hopeful sign. Ramona thought even though the dinosaurs were more for third graders than fourth graders. Mrs. Meacham said, "So I will get to know you better. I want each of you to write a paragraph telling me about yourself." Ramona tapped her pencil on her nose and noticed that Yard Ape, who sat across the aisle, was already writing, apparently without having to think. Susan in front of Ramona leaned her head on her fist. A boy went to the pencil sharpener. Someone sighed. Feet shuffled. Ramona began to write. She enjoyed writing in cursive because her third grade teacher once said, "Ramona, your cursive is better than mine." Now she wrote fast because she had so much to say. "My name is Ramona Quimby. I have a baby sister. She's cute. She screams if she's hungry." Ramona paused. Screams looked peculiar. Peculiar is another word for just doesn't look right. Maybe it was spelled with EA instead of EE. Oh, well, anyone would know what she meant. She had so much to say, she didn't want to waste time spelling. "Sometimes I sit on the couch and hold her." Mrs. Fuxa read that right. Ramona enjoyed writing. Her face grew flushed as she wrote faster and faster toward the dinosaurs at the bottom of the page. Her last lines, not as neat as her first, were written across the dinosaur heads. "She can grab my figner. Mom says I used to look like her. She says I can be her role model." I read that right again. Ramona squeezed a tiny sketch of a baby's sleeping face between a brontosaurus and a tyrannosaurus. Ramona was proud of her work. She glanced around to see what classmates had written about themselves. She leaned forward to look over Susan's shoulder. Susan had written half a page in neat cursive and was busy coloring dinosaurs neatly, of course, with crayons. Ramona read, "My name is Susan. My favorite color is blue. My favorite food is—" Ramona did not need to read any further. She half rose from her seat to look across the aisle toward Yard Ape and read in his neat uphill cursive, "My name is Daniel. Call me Yard Ape. I'm 9 years old. I'm not married, and I'm a kid and proud of it." Me too, thought Ramona, filled with admiration for Yard Ape, a smart boy who always earned stars or good work at the top of his papers, and looked as if he was about to get into trouble. Somehow he never did, not in the classroom. On the playground, he ran faster, yelled louder, and kicked balls farther than any of the other boys. "All right, class," said Mrs. Meacham, "pass your papers to the front." Ramona was so pleased with her work, she was almost always sorry to part with it. At lunchtime, when the class went to the multi-purpose room, Daisy sat down beside Ramona. "Okay if I sit here?" she asked. "Sure," said Ramona. Together the girls tore open their lunch bags. They shared Ramona's corn chips and each ate half of Daisy's brownie. Ramona told Daisy about Roberta. Daisy wished she had a little sister. She only had a big brother. Ramona admired Daisy's long, blonde hair, and Daisy admired Ramona's short hair and said she was lucky to have hair that didn't get tangled when it was washed. It was a good beginning. After lunch, Mrs. Meacham said, "I've had time to look over what you've written. There's one description I would like to read to you." Mine, Ramona silently prayed. Sure enough, it was Ramona's description of Roberta that the teacher chose to read. Mrs. Meacham did not seem to notice a few misspelled words because she knew what Ramona meant. The class seemed to enjoy it, and Ramona was ecstatic. She couldn't wait to tell her mom. The rest of the day passed quickly. Ramona ran all the way home from the bus and found her mother sitting on the couch drinking tea and reading a book for her book club, which met once a month. "Guess what?" Ramona burst out. "I wrote a composition about Roberta." "Shh, Roberta's asleep." Mrs. Quimby placed a marker in her book and closed it. "Sounds interesting," she said, and took a sip of tea. "It was," whispered Ramona. "It was so interesting that Mrs. Meacham read it to the whole class. Mrs. Meacham is about 1,000,000 years old, but she's nice. We'll stop there for a minute. When she says she's 1,000,000 years old, what's Ramona doing?" If you said the word exaggerating in your head, you're correct. This isn't the only time Ramona's going to exaggerate. It's that kind of one of her character traits, so we'll have to keep watching for that. I can't wait to read your composition, said her mother. Ramona frowned thoughtfully. I suppose I could have said Roberta spits up sometimes. We don't have to tell the whole world our little secrets. Mrs. Quimby looked amused, which Ramona found pleasant, not like being laughed at. Mrs. Quimby sipped her tea. It was a moment for confidences. Ramona told her mother, there's a new girl named Daisy Kidd with bands on her teeth and long golden hair like a fairy princess and a brownie at her lunch. I know I'm going to like her a lot. Good, she sounds nice, said Mrs. Quimby. Ramona picked up her mother's book, Moby Dick. What's this about, she asked. A whale that bit off a man's leg, said Mrs. Quimby. Our book club decided to read a book we had all heard about all our lives but had never actually read. Sounds interesting. Ramona opened the book, which turned out not to look exciting at all. The print was small, the lines were close together, and there was almost no quotation marks. She closed the book. She liked her own writing better. That wasn't all she liked. She liked Mrs. Meacham. She liked Daisy. She liked Yard Ape. She liked the 4th grade. It was going to be a great year. That's all for Chapter 1. So now what you need to do is get your worksheet back out. This won't take you very long to complete. You're going to want to use your book to look up the answers. No guessing. Okay, go back in the book and remember where Ramona met her friend and find out how they got to know each other, some facts about Ramona, and you will be done with today. And you can come back tomorrow and listen to a few more chapters. Have a great day, everybody.